The weight of the child in my belly was nothing compared to the weight of the lie I was about to expose. For 9 months I had been living in a gilded cage, the wife of a millionaire, believing I was building a family. But a single misplaced receipt led me down a rabbit hole of deceit that was darker than I could ever imagine. You think you know stories of betrayal. You think you know the pain of infidelity. You haven't heard mine. This isn't just about a husband and a mistress. This is about a truth so shocking it would shatter the very foundation of my world, all behind the cold marble walls of a mansion built on secrets. My world was one of curated perfection. From the outside I was Amelia Sterling, wife of the tech magnate Julian Sterling. Our life was a feature in Prestige Living magazine. Our home, a sprawling, minimalist masterpiece in the Hollywood Hills, overlooked a city of dreams we had seemingly conquered. At 29, 7 months pregnant with our first child, I should have been incandescent with joy. Instead, a cold dread had been coiling in my gut for months, a feeling as persistent and unwelcome as the morning sickness of my first trimester. Julian was a man forged in ambition. He was charming, brilliant, and possessed a restless energy that had built his software empire, Nexus Dynamics, from a garage startup into a billion-dollar titan. When I met him, I was an art curator, passionate about Renaissance portraiture. He'd swept into my gallery and my life with the force of a hurricane, promising me a world of passion and partnership. I fell for the man who discussed Botticelli with the same fervor he discussed binary code. The first 3 years of our marriage were a blur of black-tie galas, private jet excursions to Monaco, and quiet Sunday mornings where he'd trace the curve of my spine while we read in bed. We were a team. We were the team. Then about a year ago, the shift began. It was subtle at first. Business trips grew longer. Late nights at the office became the norm. The easy laughter that once filled our cavernous home was replaced by a sterile silence, broken only by the hum of the climate control system. He blamed the pressure of a new product launch. "Just a few more months, Leah," he'd say, kissing my forehead, his touch feeling more like a formality than an act of affection. "Then it's just you and me, and the baby." The baby, our son. This child was supposed to be our anchor, the culmination of our love, the thing that would mend the fraying edges of our marriage. We'd struggled to conceive a painful journey of clinics and consultations that had left me feeling like a science experiment. When I finally became pregnant, the relief was so profound, it was almost painful. Julian seemed overjoyed, showering me with gifts, a new car, a ridiculous diamond necklace, but the emotional distance remained. It was like he was celebrating a successful business acquisition, not the impending arrival of his son. The serpent's thread. The first clue that unraveled everything was a receipt, not for lingerie or a hotel room. It was far more mundane and therefore more sinister. I was sorting through his travel expenses for our accountant, a task I'd always done when I found it tucked into the pocket of a blazer, just back from the dry cleaners. It was from a boutique floral shop in a quiet upscale neighborhood called Larchmont Village. The charge was for $450. The item listed was weekly peony subscription. It wasn't for me. I was allergic to peonies. Julian knew this. We'd once had to leave a charity dinner because the centerpieces made my eyes swell shut. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. It was a small thing, but it was wrong. I checked our credit card statements online. Every Monday for the past 6 months, a $450 charge from Larchmont Blooms, a subscription for someone else. My mind raced. Who was she? For a week, I said nothing. I watched Julian, studied him like one of the portraits I used to analyze. I saw the way his thumb hovered over his phone, the quick, secretive smiles that didn't reach his eyes. The lie was a shadow behind his handsome features. I needed more than a flower subscription. I needed a name, a face, a place. The breakthrough came from his car's integrated navigation system. He thought I didn't know how to access the history. One evening, while he was on another late-night conference call, I slipped into the garage. The cool air smelled of gasoline and his expensive leather cologne. My hands trembled as I powered on the dashboard screen. Recent destinations. There were the usual: his office downtown, the airport, our favorite restaurants. But one address was visited 3, sometimes 4 times a week, always in the late afternoon. It was a residential address in Larchmont Village. I typed the address into a search engine on my phone. My breath hitched. The search results showed property records. The owner of the meticulously restored 1920s Spanish-style villa was a holding company. But a quick cross-reference of the company's directors led me to a name: Isabella Rossi. Isabella Rossi. The name was like a shard of glass in my throat. She wasn't some random woman. She was the chief operations officer of Sterling's main competitor, a rival firm called Viridian Technologies. She was a legend in the tech world, ruthless, fiercely intelligent, and strikingly beautiful in a severe, intimidating way. I'd seen her picture in business journals: dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, sharp features, eyes that could dissect a man's soul. She was Julian's equal, his nemesis, and apparently the recipient of his weekly peony subscriptions. The betrayal was no longer a simple, sordid affair. It was a corporate espionage novel come to life. Was he sleeping with the enemy? Was he feeding her company secrets? Or was she feeding him ours? The thought that our life, our marriage, and now our child could be collateral damage in some perverse power game made me physically ill. I had to know. I couldn't live another day in the suffocating uncertainty. I couldn't bring a child into a world built on such a monumental deception. That Saturday morning, Julian left for his usual round of golf. "Don't overdo it today, Leah," he said, kissing my swollen belly. "Rest up for my 2 most important people." The hypocrisy of his words was a physical blow. As soon as his car disappeared down the long, winding driveway, I made my decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to call my mother or my friends. I was going to get answers. I put on a simple black maternity dress, the fabric stretching over the life I carried inside me. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes wide with a terrifying mixture of fear and resolve. I was no longer just Amelia Sterling, the socialite wife. I was a mother protecting her child from a lie that threatened to poison his very existence. I took the keys to my car, my hand steady. I typed the Larchmont Village address into my own navigation system. And I drove. I drove towards the truth, knowing with every fiber of my being that it would destroy me. The 40-minute drive from the sterile heights of the Hollywood Hills to the charming, tree-lined streets of Larchmont Village felt like a journey across a psychic chasm. My car, a silent electric SUV that Julian had called the safest car in the world for my family, glided through the sun-drenched Los Angeles streets. But inside a tempest was raging. With each passing mile, my mind became a highlight reel of our life together, the images flickering and distorting in the harsh light of my new reality. I saw our first date, a spontaneous trip to the Griffith Observatory. Julian had pointed out constellations, weaving stories of ancient gods and cosmic collisions. He'd looked at me with such awe, as if I were a newly discovered star. "You," he had whispered, his breath warm against my ear, "are the most brilliant thing in this entire universe." Was that a lie? Was it just a line, a perfectly crafted piece of code designed to bypass my defenses? I remembered our wedding, a lavish affair in a Tuscan villa. We'd written our own vows. Mine were about finding a home in his heart. His were about partnership, about building an empire of two, a legacy that would outlast us both. He had cried. Real tears had traced paths down his handsome face as he slipped the heavy platinum band on my finger. Had he been crying for the love he felt, or for the magnificent lie he was orchestrating? My hands tightened on the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. The baby kicked a sharp, insistent jab just below my ribs. I placed a hand over the spot, a protective, instinctual gesture. "It's okay, little one." I murmured the words, feeling hollow in the silent car. "Mummy's just sorting things out." But how could I sort this out? This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated long-term deception involving his chief professional rival. The city's landscape shifted. The ostentatious mansions gave way to manicured suburbs, then to the quaint, almost historic atmosphere of Larchmont. It was a neighborhood of old money and quiet power, a place where people valued privacy above all else, the kind of place where a secret could be easily kept. The navigation system announced, "Your destination is on the right." I pulled over a block away, parking under the shade of a large jacaranda tree. My heart was a frantic bird beating against the cage of my ribs. I could turn back. I could go home, confront Julian in the familiar territory of our cold white mansion. I could scream and cry and throw things, but what would that accomplish? He was a master of control, a puppeteer who could twist words and emotions to his will. In our home, he held all the power. He would gaslight me, call me hormonal, crazy paranoid. He would make me doubt the evidence of my own eyes. No. The confrontation had to happen here, in her territory, on neutral ground where his power was diluted. I needed to see them together, to witness the dynamic with my own eyes. I needed to shatter the carefully constructed compartments of his life. I got out of the car, my legs feeling unsteady. The warm air was thick with the scent of jasmine. I walked down the block, my sensible flat shoes making soft sounds on the pavement. The houses were beautiful, each one a testament to classic Californian architecture. Then I saw it. The house was exactly as the online pictures had shown, but more imposing in person. A Spanish-style villa with a white stucco facade, a red tile roof, and intricate wrought-iron grills over the windows. A high bougainvillea-covered wall surrounded the property, ensuring complete privacy. It was a fortress, and through the ornate iron gate I could see Julian's car, a sleek silver Aston Martin, identical to the one in our garage at home, except for the license plate. He had two of the same car, one for each life. The sheer arrogance of it stole my breath. I stood there for a moment, hidden by a large oak tree on the sidewalk. What was I going to do? Ring the doorbell and say what? "Hi, I'm the pregnant wife. I've just come to see the woman my husband buys peonies for." It sounded pathetic, like the plot of a bad daytime soap opera. But the anger, cold and sharp, was beginning to eclipse the fear. This woman, Isabella Rossi, was complicit in the destruction of my marriage. She was a willing participant in Julian's lies. She was not some innocent, love-struck girl. She was a shark, just like him. They deserved to be confronted. I deserved answers. My child deserved a life free from this poison. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, I walked up the stone path to the heavy, carved wooden door. There was no doorbell. Instead, there was a small, discreet intercom panel with a camera. My reflection stared back at me from the dark lens, a pale, pregnant woman with a storm in her eyes. I pressed the button. A moment of silence. Then a voice, crisp and clear, emanated from the speaker. It was a woman's voice, imbued with an authority that was both effortless and absolute. Yes, it was her, Isabella Rossi. I had no doubt. My own voice, when it came, was surprisingly steady. I'm here to see Julian. It's Amelia. Amelia Sterling. There was another pause, longer this time. I imagined the shock, the frantic calculations happening behind that wall. I had just thrown a grenade into her perfectly manicured sanctuary. The silence stretched on thick with unspoken possibilities. Was she calling Julian? Were they concocting a story? Would they simply refuse to open the door? Finally, the intercom crackled again. The same cool, controlled voice spoke a single, chilling word. Enter. A loud click echoed in the quiet street as the electronic lock on the gate disengaged. The gate swung inward slowly, a silent invitation into the lion's den. I took one last breath of free air and stepped across the threshold. The gate clicked shut behind me, the sound as final as a prison door. The courtyard I stepped into was a stark contrast to the warm, vibrant street I had just left. It was a minimalist oasis of stone and water. A single ancient olive tree stood in the center, its gnarled branches reaching towards the sky. The only sound was the gentle trickle of water from a modern black slate fountain. The air was cool and still. There were no peonies in sight. Of course not. That would be too sentimental, too obvious. The front door opened before I reached it, and there she was. Isabella Rossi was even more formidable in person than in her corporate headshots. She was tall and slender, dressed in tailored grey trousers and a simple cream-colored silk blouse. Her dark hair was pulled back into a severe chignon, emphasizing her high cheekbones and a jawline that could cut glass. She wore no discernible makeup, yet her features were flawless, her skin pale and luminous. Her eyes, a deep, intelligent brown, assessed me with an unnerving lack of emotion. She wasn't surprised or angry or flustered. She was observing, like a scientist studying a specimen. "Amelia," she said. Her voice was as cool and smooth as the stone tiles beneath my feet. She didn't offer a hand, nor did she smile. "This is an unexpected visit." "I'm sure it is," I replied, my voice holding steady. I glanced past her into the house. The interior was an extension of the courtyard, all clean lines, glass walls, and a muted palette of grey, white, and black. It was less a home and more a corporate art gallery. A space designed for control and precision, not comfort. Julian's car keys were on a glass console table next to a single, perfect white orchid. "Where is he?" I asked, my gaze returning to her face. "Julian is on a business call," she said without blinking. "He'll be down in a moment. Please come in." She stepped aside, a gesture of invitation that felt more like a command. I walked past her, the scent of her perfume, something clean and sharp like citrus and cedar lingering in the air. I stopped in the center of the vast open-plan living room. A wall of glass looked out onto a sleek infinity pool. The furniture was modern and uncomfortable looking. There were no personal photographs, no clutter, No signs of a life, lived only a life, curated. I turned to face her, my hand instinctively resting on my belly. I think we can dispense with the pleasantries, Isabella. You and I both know why I'm here. A flicker of something, was it amusement, crossed her features before being instantly suppressed. You believe you do, she said, her voice dropping a fraction of a decibel. But I assure you, you've walked into a story far more complex than the one you've written in your head. Oh, I doubt it's that complex, I retorted, the anger finally beginning to bubble to the surface. My husband, the father of my child, has been lying to me for months. He's been here with you, his biggest professional rival. He buys you flowers he knows I'm allergic to. It seems quite simple from where I'm standing. It's sordid and cliché. Isabella walked slowly towards a wet bar built into the wall and poured herself a glass of sparkling water. She didn't offer me one. Cliché is for amateurs, Amelia, and neither Julian nor I are amateurs. She took a slow, deliberate sip, her eyes never leaving mine. You see this as a love affair. That's a failure of imagination. Her condescension was infuriating. And what should I see it as, a business merger? Are you acquiring my husband's assets one at a time, starting with him? She set her glass down with a soft click. You're his wife. You of all people should know that for Julian everything is a business merger, even his marriage. The words hit me like a physical slap. Before I could process the venom in her statement, footsteps echoed from a floating staircase at the far end of the room. It was Julian. He was dressed in casual linen trousers and a soft grey t-shirt, clothes I had never seen before. His at-home clothes. For this home. He stopped halfway down the stairs when he saw me. All the colour drained from his face. The charming, confident mask of Julian Sterling fell away, revealing a man who looked cornered, panicked, and for the first time since I'd known him, truly weak. Leah. He breathed, his voice a choked whisper. What are you doing here? I just looked at him standing there on the staircase between his two lives, the pregnant wife and the corporate mistress. The cold, sterile mansion in the hills and the cold, sterile villa in the village. It was all a perfectly balanced, monstrous equation. And I was the variable he hadn't accounted for. I could ask you the same thing, Julian. I said, my voice dangerously quiet. But I think I already know the answer. I just came to see it for myself. He descended the rest of the stairs slowly, his eyes darting between me and Isabella. He was trying to gauge the situation to figure out which fire to put out first. Isabella, for her part, remained perfectly still by the bar, an impassive observer to the drama she had helped create. She held all the power in that moment, and she knew it. Leah, honey, this isn't what it looks like. Julian began, his voice taking on that smooth, placating tone he used to close deals and calm investors. Don't, I cut him off, my voice sharp. Don't you dare insult my intelligence by telling me this isn't what it looks like. You're here, in her house. Your car is outside. You've been lying to me for at least 6 months. So please tell me, Julian, what exactly is it that I'm not seeing correctly? He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture of agitation that was a crack in his composure. It's complicated. It's business. Business. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Is that what you call it? Does your business require you to buy another woman flowers every week? Does it require you to have a secret car and a secret life? Because if so, you need to redefine your corporate strategy. I took a step towards him, my body thrumming with adrenaline. "I am carrying your son, Julian, your heir, the child you told me would complete our family. And while I've been home growing your legacy, you've been here. With her." I gestured towards Isabella, who watched us with the detached curiosity of a spectator at a Roman circus. "She has nothing to do with this," Julian said quickly, a desperate attempt to shield Isabella. And that's when I lost it. The pretense of calm shattered. "She has everything to do with this," I yelled, my voice echoing in the cavernous room. "You chose her. You chose to betray me with the one person you knew would hurt me the most, your rival. Did you get a thrill out of the danger, Julian? Was our life, our marriage, just too boring for you?" He reached for me, his hands outstretched. "Leah, please, let's go home. We can talk about this at home." "No," I said, stepping back from his touch as if he were on fire. "There is no home anymore. You destroyed it. I want to talk about it here, now, in front of your business partner." The standoff was absolute. The three of us stood in a triangle of betrayal and deceit. The air was thick with unspoken words. Julian trapped and exposed. Me, the broken but defiant wife. And Isabella, the cool, enigmatic catalyst. But as I looked at her, I realized she wasn't just a catalyst. She was something more. Her composure wasn't just confidence, it was knowledge. She knew something I didn't. The real story hadn't even begun. The silence in that sterile room was a living entity pulsing with tension. Julian stood frozen between us, a fallen king in his own corrupted court. His gaze flickered from my face, etched with rage and grief, to Isabella's, which remained a mask of impenetrable calm. It was clear who he feared more. "Julian," Isabella said, her voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel. "Tell her." It wasn't a suggestion, it was an order. He visibly flinched. "Izzy, not now. This is not the way." "Izzy." I spat the nickname. "How cozy. And what way would you prefer, Julian?" "That I remain the ignorant, pregnant wife at home, blissfully unaware while you conduct your business here." "It's not what you think," he insisted, his voice pleading. He finally turned his full attention to me, trying to deploy the charisma that had always worked before. "Amelia, my love, you have to believe me. What Isabella and I have, it's not about romance. It's not about love. It's a strategic alliance." I laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that had no place in this pristine environment. "A strategic alliance is that the new term for adultery? Does it get you a better tax break?" My hand rested protectively on my stomach. The baby was still, as if sensing the toxicity in the room. "And our child? Is he part of the strategy? Is he the collateral for this grand alliance?" "He's the entire point of it," Isabella said quietly from the bar. Both Julian and I turned to stare at her. Her words hung in the air, cryptic and heavy. Julian shot her a look of pure panic. "Isabella, stop!" But she was no longer listening to him. She pushed herself off the bar and walked towards me, her movements fluid and deliberate. She stopped a few feet away, her dark eyes boring into mine. "You're right about one thing, Amelia," she began, her tone analytical, devoid of pity. "This isn't about love. Julian is incapable of love. He's capable of ambition, acquisition, and self-preservation. That's all. You weren't a wife to him. You were an acquisition. A beautiful, well-bred, intelligent asset who would look good on his arm and eventually produce the one thing he couldn't create himself a legitimate heir. Every word was a perfectly aimed dart, puncturing the last remnants of my denial. "Stop it!" Julian warned, his voice a low growl. He took a step towards her, but she held up a hand, and he actually stopped. It was a stunning display of power. He, the titan of industry, was utterly subservient to her. "He needs to hear this, Julian. More importantly, she needs to hear this." Isabella continued, her gaze locked on me. "You want to know why your husband is here. You want to know what our strategic alliance is. I'll tell you. His company, Nexus Dynamics, is on the verge of collapse." The statement was so unexpected, so outrageous, that for a moment I could only stare at her. "What? That's impossible. He just closed a record-breaking quarter." Isabella smiled, a thin, mirthless curve of her lips. "A quarter propped up by phantom investments and creative accounting. The core technology is obsolete. My company Viridian has developed a new quantum processing unit that will make his entire product line irrelevant in less than a year. He knows it. The market doesn't yet. But they will." I looked at Julian. His face was ashen. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at the floor, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The powerful man I married had vanished, replaced by this deflated stranger. "So what is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You're helping him. His biggest rival." "I'm not helping him," she corrected. "I'm orchestrating a takeover. A clean, quiet absorption of Nexus Dynamics into Viridian. It prevents a market panic and allows Julian to exit with a fraction of his paper fortune intact, rather than being wiped out completely and facing shareholder lawsuits. It's a rescue mission of a sort, my rescue mission." It was all starting to make a horrifying kind of sense. The long hours, the stress, the distance. It wasn't about a new launch. It was about a slow, agonizing death. And the affair. The lies. I pressed, needing to connect the dots. Why was that necessary? "Leverage," Isabella said simply. "Trust. In order for this to work, we had to be in constant contact, away from the prying eyes of our respective boards. Our relationship gave us the perfect cover. No one would suspect that late-night meetings between two rivals were about a merger. They would assume the obvious, the cliché you mentioned. It was the most effective misdirection." Julian finally looked up, his eyes pleading with me. "She's right, Leah. It was all a front, a business arrangement. It meant nothing. I was trying to protect you, to protect our future, protect me." I was shaking now, a deep, bone-rattling tremor. "You protected me by systematically lying to my face every single day. You protected me by having an affair, a strategic affair with another woman while I was at home going through IVF treatments, injecting myself with hormones, crying every month when it failed. Was that part of the strategy too, Julian?" He had no answer. He just stood there, exposed and pathetic. "The peonies," I said, the memory of the receipt returning. "Why the peonies?" It was Isabella who answered. "A test. A small constant reminder to Julian of where his loyalties lay in this arrangement. A detail that was specifically about me and not about you. It was a symbol of the contract between us." A symbol. My marriage, my life had been undone by a symbol. I felt a dizzying wave of nausea. The entire foundation of my world had been revealed as a sham. My husband wasn't just a cheat. He was a fraud. My marriage wasn't just broken. It had never been real. It was a stage, and I had been the unwitting lead actress in a play directed by these two monsters of ambition. But even as the pieces fell into place, a gnawing feeling remained in my gut. This was devastating, but it didn't feel like the whole story. Isabella had said the baby was the entire point. They had explained the business, the affair, but they hadn't explained that. Why was my child so central to this corporate takeover? I looked from Julian's defeated face to Isabella's calculating one. "You're still lying," I said, the realization dawning on me with chilling certainty. "There's more. What is it you're not telling me? What is the real reason my son is the entire point of all this?" Julian's eyes widened in sheer terror. He looked at Isabella, a silent, desperate plea. "Don't. Izzy, for God's sake, don't." Isabella simply looked back at me, her expression unreadable. And in that moment, I knew. The shocking truth, the real one, the one that would truly destroy me, was about to be revealed. And it wasn't Julian who was going to deliver the final fatal blow. It was her. The air in the room grew thin, charged with the impending impact of a truth I wasn't ready for, yet desperately needed to hear. Julian looked like a man on the brink of a precipice, begging the wind not to blow. "What is she talking about, Julian?" I demanded, my voice raw. "What is the secret about my baby?" He shook his head, mumbling, "Leah, please, let's just go. We can talk this through. Just you and me." "No," I said, my resolve hardening into something unbreakable. "I'm not leaving this house until I know everything." I turned my gaze back to the woman who was the architect of my ruin. "Isabella, you started this. You finish it." Isabella gave Julian a look that was almost pitying before her attention settled back on me. She walked over to a sleek minimalist desk in the corner of the room, opened a drawer and pulled out a thick leather-bound folder. She carried it back and placed it on the glass coffee table between us. The sound was a soft, definitive thud. "You speak of marriage vows, Amelia," she said, her voice even and methodical. "But the most important agreement Julian ever signed wasn't with you in that church in Tuscany. It was with my father, 10 years ago." I frowned, confused. "Your father, what does he have to do with any of this?" "My father was Antonio Rossi," she explained. "He was the founder of Viridian Technologies. He was also Julian's original mentor and investor. When Julian was just a brilliant kid with a revolutionary idea, it was my father who gave him the seed money to start Nexus Dynamics. But the investment came with conditions." She opened the folder. Inside were pages of dense legal text filled with clauses and signatures. My father was a traditionalist. He believed in legacy and bloodlines. He saw Julian as the son he never had, but he also saw his ambition as a potential liability. He worried Julian would burn too bright, too fast, and consume everything, including the company my father had helped him build. She slid a single document across the table towards me. "This is the original investors' agreement. Read Clause 7B. My hands trembled as I picked up the paper. The legalese was dense, but the words in Clause 7B were terrifyingly clear. It stipulated that upon reaching a certain valuation, or within 10 years of the company's founding, Julian Sterling was required to produce a legitimate biological heir to secure the lineage of the company. If he failed to do so, controlling interest in Nexus Dynamics would revert to Antonio Rossi's estate, an estate of which Isabella was the sole executor. "The 10-year deadline is next month," Isabella stated, as if commenting on the weather. "My father died 2 years ago. The clause is ironclad." My mind was reeling, trying to process the grotesque implication. "So, our marriage, trying for a baby, it was all to satisfy a business contract. It was the sole reason for your marriage. Isabella confirmed her words, merciless. Julian searched for you. He had a list of criteria. Good family, intelligent, healthy, elegant. The perfect candidate to be the mother of the sterling heir. Your courtship was a job interview, Amelia, and you passed with flying colours. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The love story, the whirlwind romance, the shared dreams, all a fabrication. I wasn't his partner. I was breeding stock. I looked at Julian, who was now weeping silently, his face in his hands. He couldn't even look at me. But a crucial piece still didn't fit. The fertility treatments, I whispered the memory, a fresh wave of pain. We struggled for so long. The doctors couldn't find a reason. They said it was unexplained infertility. Isabella's expression softened, but only for a fraction of a second. It was the first glimmer of humanity I had seen from her. The infertility was not unexplained, she said gently. And it was not yours. The room went silent. The hum of the air conditioning seemed to roar in my ears. I stared at her, not comprehending. What? Julian, Isabella, said her voice now filled with a strange, cold sorrow. Julian is sterile. A childhood illness. It left him unable to ever have biological children. He has known since he was 19 years old. The world stopped. It was a physical sensation, like being plunged into ice water. My breath left my body in a silent gasp. The baby inside me, who I had thought was the last sacred piece of our love. The one pure thing in this world of lies was what my eyes locked onto Julian's. He finally looked up, his face a mess of tears and shame. Leah, I was going to tell you, he sobbed. I love him. I already love him as my own son. I swear. He's not yours. I whispered the words like dust in my mouth. My hand flew from my belly as if it had been burned. This baby is not yours. It doesn't matter, he cried, scrambling towards me on his knees, grabbing at my dress. He will be a sterling. He will be my son, our son. I recoiled from his touch, stumbling backwards until I hit the back of a sofa. My mind was a maelstrom of confusion and horror. Then, who, how? Isabella answered the question. He couldn't. The IVF treatments were a sham, a performance for your benefit. The samples Julian provided at the clinic were discarded. The sample that was used to inseminate you came from a carefully selected anonymous donor. She gestured back to the contract on the table. It was all arranged, stipulated by the agreement. The donor had to meet a specific profile health intelligence background, all vetted and approved. You were never going to conceive his child, Amelia. You were contracted to carry the child of a stranger to save his company. There it was, the final devastating truth. The truth wasn't that my husband was having an affair. The truth wasn't that his company was failing. The truth was that my entire life, my body, my love, my motherhood, had been hijacked for a corporate endgame. The baby I carried, the child I loved with every fibre of my being, was a product of the most profound violation imaginable. He was conceived in a lie for a lie. He was a pawn, a signature on a contract made of flesh and blood. Julian was still on the floor, babbling about love and forgiveness. Isabella stood by the table, the grim keeper of secrets. And I was just gone. The woman who had walked in that door an hour ago, the angry, betrayed wife, had been annihilated. In her place was something hollow and cold. I looked down at my swollen belly. The life inside me, so innocent and pure, was now the epicenter of this monstrous deceit. He was the reason for all of it. And yet he was the only thing that wasn't a lie. He was real. He was mine. And in that moment of absolute devastation, a new feeling began to surface, pushing through the shock and the grief. It was a cold, hard, unadulterated rage. It was the fury of a mother. They thought they had taken everything from me. They were wrong. They had left me with the one thing that mattered, and they had no idea what I was about to do with it. The initial shock receded, replaced by a clarity so sharp it was painful. I looked at the two people who had orchestrated my life, who had treated my body and my child as commodities. Julian, the sniveling, broken man on the floor, and Isabella, the cold, calculating mastermind. They thought they had won. They thought I would break. I straightened up, pulling myself away from the sofa. I smoothed the fabric of my black dress over my belly. My movements were slow, deliberate. The trembling had stopped. "Get up, Julian," I said. My voice was different. It was stripped of all emotion, flat and hard as steel. He looked up at me, his eyes red and swollen. "Leah, please, we can fix this. I can fix this." "There is nothing to fix," I stated. I walked over to the coffee table and looked down at the contract, at the clause that had defined my existence for the past 4 years. Then I looked at Isabella. "You did all of this, Hu," I said, "to execute your father's will, to take control of Nexus." "I did what was necessary to protect my father's legacy and my company's future," she replied, her composure unwavering. "Julian's failure is his own, and my child is the key." I continued, my mind working faster than it ever had before. Without a male heir carrying the sterling name by the deadline, the company defaults to you. But with him, Julian retains a stake, albeit under your control. This child saves him from complete annihilation. "A simplified but accurate assessment," she conceded. I let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "You're both so clever. You planned for every contingency, every legal loophole, every market fluctuation. But you made one catastrophic mistake." Julian finally scrambled to his feet. "What mistake? We can give you anything, Leah. Anything you want. A settlement, houses. You'll be taken care of for life. You and the baby." I turned my head slowly to look at him, and for the first time he saw the new person standing in front of him. He visibly recoiled. "The mistake you made," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, "was thinking that this baby belongs to you. You think his name, his identity is yours to assign. You thought you could buy a womb, create an heir, and file him away like a stock certificate." I placed both hands on my belly, a gesture that was now one of ownership, not protection. This child grew inside my body. He is made of my flesh and my blood. He is the product of my pain and my hope. He is not a sterling. He is not a contractual obligation. I walked towards the front door. Julian moved to block my path. "Leah, don't. Think about his future, the resources, the opportunities I can give him." I stopped directly in front of him, close enough to see the panic in his eyes. "You will give him nothing, because you will have no legal claim to him." A flicker of confusion crossed his face. "What are you talking about? I'm your husband. I'll be on the birth certificate. I'll be his legal father." And then I delivered my checkmate. "No, you won't," I said calmly, "because the child will not be born in California. He will not be born in the United States at all." I reached into my handbag and pulled out my passport. I held it up. "My flight leaves tonight. I'm going to a country where the laws of paternity are very different. A country where, as the birth mother, I alone have the right to name the father on the birth certificate. And if I choose to leave that line blank, no man can ever force a paternal claim without my consent. Especially not with a fraudulent marriage and a mountain of evidence of coercion. Julian stared at the passport, then at my face, his mind struggling to catch up. You can't. Where are you going? That's no longer your concern, I replied. I looked over his shoulder at Isabella, who for the first time looked genuinely shocked. The Ice Queen's composure had finally cracked. She understood the implications immediately. The contract, she breathed. It specifies a legitimate heir. If he's not legally recognized as Julian's son, with the sterling name, the clause is not met. I smiled a real cold smile. Exactly. The deadline is next month. By the time my son is born on the other side of the world, your deadline will have passed. Julian will have failed to produce an heir, and the controlling interest of Nexus Dynamics will revert entirely to you. You'll get what you wanted, Isabella. A complete takeover. You won't have to share a single percentage point with the man who helped you deceive me. Isabella's sharp mind processed the new reality. She looked at Julian, her expression now one of pure, unadulterated contempt for his weakness. He had lost everything. Julian was shaking his head, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. No. No, Leah, you wouldn't. You would destroy me. You would take my son. He is not your son. I finally screamed, the force of it making him stumble back. He was never your son. He was your lifeline, your get-out-of-jail-free card, and I'm cashing it in. You wanted to use my body to create a business asset. Well, this asset just liquidated you. I turned my back on him and walked to the door. You'll be hearing from my lawyer, I said over my shoulder, about the annulment of our fraudulent marriage, and about the full financial history of Nexus Dynamics, which I, as your legal wife, have every right to access. I'm sure the SEC will be very interested in the creative accounting you've been doing. That was the final blow. I had threatened not just his fortune, but his freedom. I opened the heavy front door and stepped out into the courtyard. The sun was brighter now, the air felt cleaner. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see the wreckage I had left behind. The image was burned into my mind. Julian, a completely broken man, and Isabella, the victor, who had been handed a poisoned crown, her grand takeover now tainted by the scandal that was about to erupt. As the gate clicked open, and I stepped back onto the quiet, tree-lined street, I felt a profound sense of release. I had walked into that house a victim. I was walking out a survivor. I had lost a husband, a home, a life I thought was mine. But I had gained something far more valuable. I had gained myself, and I had saved my son. He would not grow up as a sterling. He would not be defined by their toxic legacy of lies and ambition. He would be born free, and his name would be his own. The flight was long. I sat in the business class seat I had booked with Julian's own credit card, a final small act of defiance, and stared out the window as Los Angeles shrank into a glittering, deceptive jewel below. For the first few hours, I felt nothing. I was a hollowed-out vessel emptied of tears, rage, and fear. The storm had passed, leaving an eerie calm in its wake. I didn't go to my mother's or a friend's house. I had packed a single bag at the mansion before I left, grabbing my passport essential documents and a few sentimental items that predated Julian. Then I had my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Eleanor, meet me at a private airport lounge. I told her everything. The contract, the sterility, the donor. Her expression went from professional sympathy to steely fury. By the time I boarded my flight, she had already begun drafting the paperwork that would dismantle Julian Sterling's life. My destination was New Zealand. It was a country I had always dreamed of, visiting a place known for its breathtaking landscapes and progressive laws. It was as far away from the gilded cage of my former life as I could get. More importantly, their family law was exactly what I needed. It prioritized the birth mother. The first few weeks were a blur. I found a small furnished apartment in a quiet coastal town overlooking the turquoise sea. I spent my days walking on the beach, breathing in the clean, salty air, and feeling my son move inside me. He was my compass now, my true north. The emails and texts from Julian came in a flood. At first, a desperate deluge of apologies, threats, and pleas. He offered me the world half of his remaining fortune, anything to get me to put his name on the birth certificate. I instructed Eleanor to block his number and filter his emails. His voice was a poison I no longer needed in my life. There was one email, however, that Eleanor forwarded to me. It was from Isabella Rossi. It was short and clinical. Amelia. The transfer of Nexus assets to Viridian is complete. As you predicted, the board forced Julian's immediate and unconditional resignation. The scandal is being contained, but he is ruined. You have won. I hope you find what you are looking for. Isabella. There was no apology, no remorse, just a statement of fact. She had gotten what she wanted, but I sensed a hollowness in her victory. In her world of cold transactions, I had introduced an emotional variable she could never have calculated. I never replied. 2 months after I arrived on a clear, crisp morning with the sound of the ocean outside my window, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. He had a full head of dark hair and my blue eyes. When the nurse handed him to me, this tiny, perfect human, I had fought so hard for my world, which had been shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, finally reassembled itself into a new, more beautiful shape. On the birth certificate in the space for the father's name, I wrote unknown. It felt like the truest statement I had ever made. Then in the space for the child's name, I wrote Kai. It meant sea in Hawaiian and unbreakable in another language. I gave him my maiden name, Davenport, Kai Davenport, a name with no baggage, no contracts, no lies, a name that was all his own. Life became about simple things, the warmth of Kai's body against mine, the sound of his laughter, the first time he smiled. I sold the jewelry Julian had given me, using the money to set up a small trust for Kai, and to start my own business, an online art consultancy connecting small independent artists with international buyers. It was small, but it was mine. I never knew the identity of the sperm donor, and I never wanted to. Kai's father was not a name on a file. His lineage was one of love and survival. It was me. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and Kai is sleeping in his crib, I think about the life I left behind. I think about Julian and Isabella, 2 people so consumed by ambition they tried to forge a legacy out of deceit. They built an empire on a foundation of lies, and it collapsed as all such structures must. I chose a different path. I built my new world on a foundation of truth, no matter how painful it was. My legacy isn't a company or a fortune. It's the sound of my son's happy breathing in the next room. It's the freedom in knowing that we are beholden to no one. We are simply and wonderfully ourselves. I walked through fire, and on the other side I didn't find ashes. I found a new horizon. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly, completely alive. My story isn't just about betrayal. It's about rebirth. It's about walking through the fire of an unimaginable lie and finding the strength to build a new life from the ashes. I lost a fortune, a husband, and a life I thought I wanted, but I gained my freedom, my integrity, and the purest love I have ever known in my son Kai. My journey proves that your circumstances don't have to define you. It's the choices you make in your darkest moments that forge who you truly are. What would you have done in my position? Have you ever had to fight for a truth that no one else wanted to believe? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story could be the light that helps someone else find their way out of the dark. If my story resonated with you, please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more true stories of survival strength and the incredible power of the human spirit. Thank you for listening.